Welcome back to the Perek Project. In this episode, I'm really excited to share with you some uplifting stories. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was he? So he lived at the time when the temple was destroyed. And the truth is, he was responsible for helping the people and fanning their hopes for a rebirth in a totally new world for them. We're told that he was such a peace-loving person that nobody greeted him first. He always was the first person to say hello to someone. And in fact, in his parting words to his students just before he passed away, he blessed them that they should fear God as much as they fear man. And his students said, "What do you mean? Surely we should fear man less than we fear God." And he says, no, just like before we want to do something wrong, we quickly look, is anyone watching? He's saying you should fear God as much as that. He understood the reality of people. He had learnt the entire spectrum of Torah. And that's why he's able to tell us what he tells us next. He says, if you have studied much Torah, do not take credit for yourself, because that is what you were created to do. Whoa, what on earth does he mean? I can imagine you're thinking, hold on a second, you told us you were going to tell us stories to inspire and uplift. That doesn't sound very uplifting. Surely if we've done the work, we should take pride. What does he mean? He's telling us that Torah and mitzvahs has a humbling effect on a person. And someone who's done a little bit, they may take pride, but someone who's studied a lot of Torah and incorporates a lot of mitzvahs into their life, they don't have misplaced pride. Why? Because they realize that just like a bird who flies doesn't think, wow, what a great, amazing thing that I'm using my wings to fly. But they recognize that God gave them the wings and they're able to fly. So too, God gives us the abilities and the opportunities, and therefore we have to take those abilities and the opportunities and to use them. And what's fascinating about Torah and mitzvahs is that there are 248 positive commandments in the Torah, and these correspond to the 248 limbs in a person's body. And there are 365 prohibitions, and they correspond to the 365 veins and sinews in a person's body. What it's telling us, what it's teaching us on a deep level here is that when we fulfill the Torah and mitzvahs, we perfect ourselves, we perfect our physical body into eternity and for eternity. With this in mind, it's fascinating to look at Mishnah 10 and 11. He had 5 primary students that he was going to pass on the leadership to, and he speaks about their praises. Number 1, because he understood that they were going to be leaders and he wanted people to look up to them, and also because he wanted to inspire others to be like them. And what's fascinating to look at as we look at these 5 students and what he praises them for, is that the praises that he gives them are not for God-given attributes, but for things that they developed with their own hard work and perseverance. So the first is Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus. And what's really inspiring about him is that he entered adulthood as an ignoramus. He knew nothing. And only when he was in his 20s did he start to study Torah against much opposition. And what is the praise that he was given? He was compared to a cemented cistern that loses not a drop of water. The cistern keeps the water from being polluted by mud and other impurities. And we're told that just like the cistern doesn't lose a drop of water, Rabbi Eliezer had a flawless memory. And how did he achieve this flawless memory? It wasn't a God-given gift. It was because of hard work and constant review of the material and the Torah that he studied. His next student was Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananiah, and he said praiseworthy is the mother who gave birth to him, because his character was so pure that people envied his mother. And his mother was given credit for it because when she was pregnant with him, she would go to the study halls and ask people to pray that her son would grow up to be a Torah scholar. Which reminds me of a story. The Chofetz Chaim was asked by a young couple who were expecting their first child, when do we have to start worrying about education? And he turned to them and he said, if you're asking me that, you're already too late. Why? Because our kids do, not as we say, but as we do. And if you want your kids to be great, we have to be great as well. His third student was Rabbi Yossi, and he was scrupulously pious. What does that mean? It means someone who goes above the letter of the law. Let me tell you a story that shows this. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky lived in pre-war Europe. And once he went to a post office to post a letter, and the postmaster gave him too many stamps for what he paid for. And he only realized it after he left the post office. And he went back and he gave him the stamps back. And he had a feeling that the postmaster did it specially to test, is this Jew, is this rabbi going to be honest? And what's fascinating is that years later, during the war, this very postmaster who had seemed so cynical went and risked his life to hide the Jews. And Rabbi Yaakov was convinced that the reason why he did that was because he saw Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky go above and beyond the letter of the law by going back and returning those excess stamps. His fourth student was Rabbi Shimon ben Nesanel, and he praises him for having fear of sin, which seems like a weird praise. Like, a lot of people are afraid of sin. What is he praising him for? It's not the fear of the punishment, but the fear of the sin itself. He was so afraid that the action would damage his soul and damage his relationship with God, with our Father, that he was afraid to sin. His fifth student was Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, and he compares him to a spring of water that gets stronger and stronger. The difference between a spring of water and a cistern of water is that a spring of water is fresh water. And he's saying that Rabbi Elazar ben Arach, he applied his creative thinking to his learning. So he looks at quite a lot of different stories that can uplift us and shows us what greatness we can achieve when we use our God-given abilities. Thank you for listening.